Okay, good evening. I wanted to get this one started while it's still late evening here instead of trying to do it early morning. So, some big changes in Misty. We had a roll. So, before I get to the excitement there, let's talk about coin and CONY. So, looking here, we moved down 2.31%. Again, it was worse earlier, was back to that 205, 206 area in coin and closed up at 213. Not quite as high, but I looked at these. I did it on Misty. Let me do it here real fast for you guys. And so CONY only closed at 1.93. So we did better than our underlying. But it's in Misty, it's been 5 consecutive days that they've both been down. Let me add up what CONY is. It's only 4 days, but let me just give you, and normally you have a bounce in a 4 to 5 time period. So here we are with this, and we're at 20%. Okay, it's been the decline in coin. So that's a definition of a crash, right? So let's take this one and add these up. So again, in Misty, I'd already done this, and then I didn't come over here. And likewise, we did a better job here in CONY than we did in the underlying coin. Okay, so we had declines of 4 straight days of 20.01 and 15.83. So significant decline, and I understand that for everybody out there. I thought I also would give you, maybe I'll wait till after the Misty, and I'll give you what I see as some bullish signs in the Bitcoin ecosphere and why, specifically why. And then I'll give you an idea or two for protection if we encounter this again. But for the most part, this looks like we should be moving up. I would say flat to up. Until we really see volume, I don't think we're going to take off. But in this one, you know, it's really, CONY is by far the best, right? So no trades. There was a small amount. Let me jump over to our synthetic. So we're still at the 260. Not a lot changed since yesterday, right? So I updated these, and you know, we're sitting at 79 million in the hole, but that's because we rolled to 260 and the underlying stock coin is like 213, right? So as we move up $10 gains, right? So we go 213, 223, 233, assuming the first one we get almost a 30 million reduction of our liability, and the next one not quite as much, maybe 26. Has to do with time and the way options work. But this thing can get wiped out when we get right back up into the 240s, mid 240s. So we're not that far away from recovering. It's just when the Bitcoin world decides. Now, there is one big key event coming up for Misty, and that's earnings on 429. I think we're still targeted at 5.8 on coin. So I suspect that'll get exactly identified, whereas Michael Saylor came out in an interview and said this is our official date, right? So after the close of market for Mr., the underlying for Misty, that those earnings will be on 429. So we should, not that earnings drive everything, but they drive a lot. People definitely will react to that, right? So that's off in our next series. We'll talk about Misty after this. So we looked at April. Let's take a look at holdings, because holdings always tell us where money moved around, and then I'll go back to actives, which not a lot changed. So here's our groupings. One of the things that happened here, and I'll show you in the April tab, is we added a new category for our treasuries. Not a big deal to the average person, but all of a sudden I had 3 cash buckets, okay, really 4 cash buckets. We had the 6/13/2024 expiring treasury bills, then we had some out in November, and these kept the bulk of our cash. And then we added this First American government, had slightly a higher yield, and that's where they seem to throw the money. So these are mid-5 to low-5 yielding funds, right? But the beauty of this yield max type of single stock is they don't have to go out and buy these expensive stocks. They just dump a bunch of money in cash for collateral, and then they put these sophisticated synthetic options and then naked calls at the weekly level, and the collateral money supports that. So they don't break any SEC rules that say they have more than 25% of their fund focused on a single security, right? So that's their way around doing it. I think I've told people that, but I assume I'm a growing channel, so new people are coming in and they may not even understand these. So hopefully I can educate everybody. So we had our 3 remaining calls, and look at these guys now. They're so far out of the money. That's positive for us. We're going to catch all the cash flow. It's negative at the synthetic level, right? But you always want to capture everything you write the call for. That's the best you can do. So these are down to worth a nickel, down 12.5 cents, because that's the lowest one at 262. We're at 213. They're literally 99.9% probability we're going to capture 100% of the money. They've already handed us 100% of the money, but we won't have to buy them back for any value. Okay, 12 cents, 4 cents, 5.5 cents, right? So not much liability there, but this is where the 79 million is setting out there. It's a paper loss, right? So we filled up this third category, this April of 2025, and we dumped in some money there. And you'll see that when I go over here to the April tab. Normally, I don't even talk about these much anymore. That's 617,000 improvement in cash, and this is the new category. So I made a new column, allocated it across. So all of a sudden, over in just cash, we've got a minus 26. So what'll happen is we'll put on some new positions, or we'll distribute this across the other guys, and we'll pull from whichever one of these we feel like it. Typically, it's been this first treasury that, because it's closest to expiration. So not a big deal on that, but I thought I'd point it out in case somebody sees it. All right, let's go over to our active. So no new trades today on CONY. We still have 3 positions with the bulk of them setting at 270. And I've updated all this. Our implied volatility went down slightly, but it's still, and the positive on the high IV is we get to write for a lot of premium. And it reminded me about somebody's comment. Somehow I couldn't reply, and then I used my phone, because normally I don't use my phone for YouTube Studio, but I read that you can. So anyway, somebody made a couple comments. And I couldn't reply to one of them, but in case anybody can see that comment and read it, it's about Misty. I'm going to answer it in here, and if that person's watching, they'll get educated, because they seem to know a fair amount. But again, sometimes knowing 3/4 and not fully understanding it, you can come up with a wrong conclusion. So anyway, that's the status of these: 26%, 23%, 30%, right? Way out of the money. So our weeklies are really safe there. We just need to move up, right? So again, on holdings, 25,000 shares. So a small amount. And what happens here, they have these things called creation units. So when people buy in, until it gets to a 25,000 threshold, they don't report the shares as up or down. So when you see something like 225, it may have been 232, but it didn't trigger the next 25,000, right? And so, knowing that there's no way this fund is going to stay exactly the same from day to day. It could have a 2,000, a 4,000. But with these creation units, they use 25,000 blocks. So maybe they had 10 or 12 already, and 13 or 14 came in today. So that triggered them saying it was up 25,000, right? So we went up from 16,525 to 16,550. Very small. But what you'll notice in these funds is if we get 100,000, okay, they'll put positions on, right? They have to really put that cash to use because they're already parking a lot of cash, right? So they need to generate more income with more shares. Likewise, when people sell out of the fund, they need to still go put a position on, right? The way you could do that really easy would be on your synthetic here on your 260, right? Because we're in a mode where we're way down here, so we can sell our put a lot more than we can buy a call, because everything's done at the 260, right? This was chosen back when we were trading in the 240s and we were rolling out of a 250. Okay, so enough on that. Let's go to payments, which everybody should really care about this. So what I did, even though we're 79 million in the hole, I started putting these things here, and it was really useful for Misty. And I started carrying it over here, but the real truth is we've got 4 trading weeks, or even after the next couple of days before it's even an issue. So it doesn't make a lot of sense for me to tell you what we need to do over here on the synthetic. It's going to take care of itself a week at a time. So there's no real concerns on our synthetic, right? And when I show you the active tab again, that's our weeklies. So let's go look at that. So we talk about where they are. Most of that money has already been collected. I did update the chart, and I think this was yesterday. We did see a rise in volume, okay? And remember, I've been saying all along, I'm not too concerned about the sell-off because it's not on volume. So when we were in the bigger moves, we were up closer to 20 million. Well, it looks like we had about a 16 to 17 million trading shares go on day before yesterday. But if you notice, or you wouldn't notice from this chart, but you would for an individual CONY or coin chart, it's where we went way down to 205 and then we closed back to 218. So when I see bigger volume, even though we were down on the day, we moved way up from being down. And that's where actually a lot of the volume came in to support that move back up. So when you see here over the last 2 days, this shows you in percentage because I'm using one of these more sophisticated charts where the top is coin and the bottom is CONY, right? And it just hasn't had the existence, nor does it move as much. When coin gets red hot and really moves, it's always going to outpace CONY. But the idea that we're also doing weeklies, those things cap and don't let us run as aggressive because our synthetic is really like being long, right? We buy a call and sell a put, so we've got a double bullish option scenario which pretty much mimics the stock flow. But when we sell those calls, it hurts us because they can end up costing us money. But look what they're doing in this downturn. We're still hanging in there. So now I can move over here to payments and talk about it. So this is our synthetic. We're still looking good. And we will as we continue because we have so much time there, right? So our short call income, so collectively we've got 32 million, all right? We're still sitting on a 50 million credit carry forward. So we don't have the problem Misty has, right? So this actually, yeah, it's 550. Yesterday it was 525. So I really tried to double check everything. So the way I see it, we're still looking easily if we continue to, if we move up just slightly and hang in there and don't drop much from this 213, 215 range, we'll continue to make weekly income. So we could see $1.50 just in the short call, right? But the reality is we're at $1.96 when we consider both of them. So I could see us getting a 2+ payment. Is again, if we just level off and don't drop from here, CONY's looking pretty good. I could see a $2. It's early for an actual prediction, but with this carry forward, we're looking pretty good. All right, let's go to Misty. Oh, good and bad. All right, so on Misty, they did a lot of things and they didn't put out the list. So I was unable to see. I know exactly what they did because they put out their holdings at the end of the day about 3 hours after the market closed. But I kept checking and I never saw the details on the trades that they made. But I can easily analyze the trade. So let's jump in and I'll tell you everything that happened. And I had to use a guesstimate. But guys, I use a very educated guesstimate. I can get down within so I'm covering 95% accuracy with what they bought and sold to close out these positions. So when I look at the holding, when I look at the April tab, right? So I'm going to do this before I do the synthetic. So what they did was they bought 28 additional 419 calls and they used a 1290. So when we look at our position, we're at like 1188. So there's a pretty good probability at 8.58% out of the money that in 2 trading days we'll keep this. It's no significant income to really worry about, right? Even if we lost it. So it's 47. And there were 75,000 shares added also. I'll show you that when we get to the holdings detail. So 47,600 because I had to guess, right? But I'm guessing between a range. I see the high and low for the day, right, on what a 1290 sold for, and it was like $12 to $22, something like that. So I put it somewhere near the middle, and it's not going to matter if it's $53 or 53,000 or 42,000 relative to the other things. Now I also mentioned I did this. So in Misty, okay, and in Mr. Mr. has 26.66% in 5 consecutive down days, right? Minus 1%, 4.6, almost 10, 6, 5. So down 5.26 today. We only went down 4.76. And our 5 days, which technically this wasn't a down day, but I'll include it since it's 0. It didn't matter, right? This only went down less than 1%. And we had the same closing price. So we've now crashed in both of these. So sometimes crashing and getting it over with, sets the stage for moving up. But the old adage about catching a falling knife, it's like wait 3 days before you trade something, right? So this seems pretty attractive to me. But maybe it's safe if you haven't already added because you thought it was a bargain. I might wait a few days, right? Because you never know that something can't go lower. But I certainly think the bulk of it is gone. And then I'm going to tell you the info on why I'm still very bullish, right? I haven't sold any shares on what I own in Misty. I haven't added any, but I haven't sold any. And I had a pretty good position here, both in CONY and in Misty. Okay. So what they did, guys, so you notice 28. Let's go over here to our 1700. So again, this is where I didn't have the price, right? But they literally they closed out all of these positions, all 632 of their contracts, right? And we've been talking about a 28 million something loss. Well, they literally just took it to get out of the position. So again, I took a median space between the high and low, right? So this could be 30 to 30.5. Maybe it's only 28.9, but I got it 95% right, and I'll update it, right, when I get the data. So we're all done. We're cleaned out. We took that, right? So I made my best guess. And let's go over here to what they opened, right? They never go without having a synthetic, for you guys that are aware. It's called rolling because you get out of one and you get in another. I actually like this, guys. I like the idea. I'll fix this for you guys here soon. But my holdings, or sorry, my payments is all update. So I went out and said, okay, not only did they do the 632, but remember how they matched with the April, they added 28. Well, what they did was they added 632 that they closed and 28 more to match the 660 number. So that's what I saw in the holdings. We now own 660 synthetics at an 1150 call and an 1150 put. Forgot to update. I updated the 517, but not here. So these are the actual numbers for that, guys. So we actually cost us about 3 million to do that because we went right at the 1150, and that was roughly the low of the day, and we closed up around 1188. Let me get that right. So we closed at 1188. So I don't know exactly when they did it, right? But I know that we traded down to 1150. That was roughly the low on the chart. Let me just check that again for low and high. Yeah, the high was 1264. We opened at 1258, and the low was 1131. So we went as low as 1131 and came back to 1188, right? So we were off the low, not tremendously, right? But at least we came off of that low. But that gives us a much better position to start making money. I know what you all are thinking. Well, what kind of shape are we in? What's that going to do to our monthly? Well, it's a little bit early to tell. I'm kind of glad they took it off and got it over with because there's no more premium. There's no more money to be made. Really, if you're not going to move up, you need something that's going to have time decay. And the puts aren't going to have any time decay with all of that being underwater so high. So let's look at the active. So I added these guys. We kept everything. And again, look at this. What percent out of the money? 41, 38, 27. That's just captured money, right? So we're sitting down at 29.63, okay, below 30. We're at 1188, but we look really good to make all of the weekly income. So, and having is coming up. All right, let me talk to you. Well, I guess I'll tell you what my bullish stuff is, but maybe I should go in and explain everything a little better. So these are our new positions. So this cost us 1.9 million, right? So that's what this would end up saying. Hey, we've lost 1.9. Well, you add that to the 29.9, so we're about 32 million in the hole, right? Well, look at our April tab, right? We're down 32.9. So that's why I also know I'm just about at the right number, right? 29.8 and 2 puts us at 31.9, something like that. So we're not far off on what I picked for those numbers. And again, that'll get fixed. So let's take a look. What do I want to cover? Okay, I talked about active. On the chart. So I went in and update the chart. And again, the only time we went higher was like April 1. Otherwise, still no high volume. So usually when you hit a full-on bear and it's just roaring, your volume is right up there at highs. If we were doing 4 to 6 million consistently, I'd say look out below, right? But this appears just to be a pullback, an aggressive pullback prior to launching. It's just a question. Nobody can say when the exact date is. So let me give you a little bit of input. So there's a Chinese ETF that's coming out this Friday. So let's see what that does, right? That certainly can bring retail money in. The only supply that's being added, we're currently at as of the halving in Bitcoin, in the ecosphere, which is 419, 420. After the halving, there are only 450 coins a day available going forward until the next halving, right? And then it goes to 225. And we're really against that ceiling. I think 19.5 of 21 something is already out there. So we're running out of supply, okay? So look at this stat. BlackRock, when the ETFs they brought out, last month, there were 17 billion went into those BTC type ETFs. And the demand is that it should be 18 million for this month, right? So with that, just going from 17 to 18, if after the halving we go to 20, look at the stat that 18, with 18 billion coming into the fund, you're talking a demand for the coins at 500 a day. Well, you're only going to have production of 450. So if anything, we want to worry about a bubble. What you don't want to happen is to have regulators see this thing just take off and Bitcoin go to 100, 150 and run to 200 and people are like, this is insane, this kind of volatility, right? So because remember, the regulators approved all these Bitcoin ETFs. So we want a growth. We don't want to create another bubble. I'd like to see this thing move to 100, 110, maybe 125 by the end of the year. Steady rises, right? With an occasional pullback and a move up. So anyway, I thought I would throw that out. Here's something else to keep in mind for you guys to get nervous. I mean, I get nervous, and I've been trading and investing for 35 years. So I wanted to say to you that before we do this payments tab, that one of the things you can do, and I'm surprised somebody hasn't said to me, Bruce, most people just sell or close their eyes and, how can I protect myself? Well, you can buy puts on MicroStrategy. Well, good luck with that. That's a $1,700 stock and the premiums are huge, right? So it's very difficult to cover yourself there. But you can go out on Bitcoin because there's still a strong correlation. And there's an ETF called BITI, B-I-T-I. Some of you probably already have or know it, right? BITO, B-I-T-O, is a long Bitcoin, right? BITI is a short Bitcoin. So it bottomed around 6.5 on the chart, and it's 8 something now. So if you still have fear and you don't like this and you'd feel better, go out and buy some BITI, right? And then just if you see your MSTY, I wouldn't, at this point, I wouldn't advise selling out at MSTY. I think your opportunity to sell out would have been at 37, 38. I wouldn't be selling out at 29. Now, can I tell you absolutely it's not going to $20? No, but there's not much sign even on the Bitcoin chart, on the Mr. chart. I mean, 1,000 would probably be the absolute pullback that made any sense, and we're at 1188, and I don't really think Mr. goes. And we're going to find out on 429. Their earnings come out. And so I'm fairly positive. All right, let's cover this. This is probably what you guys have been waiting for. So We now set with, we had a 6 million carry forward, and before we bought those back, even though we had that liability, we were setting at an $8 million gain, right? Well, look at us now. Just using the number, which again, I'm 95% accurate, I'm saying we now on our synthetic $31 million loss, but guess what? Going forward, there's no reason for us to have any losses anytime near in the synthetic or in the weeklies, unless we outrun the weeklies, which is a good thing, and it'll produce good income over here. So we're sitting at a $27 million loss. So all of a sudden, the short call, right, $1.64, and by the way, we moved from 2725 to 28, and I'll show you that number in a minute. So the 974 hurts us, right? Now, a lot of times the fund likes to pay this amount. They may not pay that amount based on the 974, right? But don't think you're going to get nothing. This fund's going to pay. And I think the worst case scenario, and again, it's way too early for this to even be accurate, is $1. And, you know, we could get up to $2 with some luck here. So this isn't relative to the actual numbers anymore. So neither one of these are. But I wanted to say we took the loss. It's done, right? We still have some short call income, which are these weeklies. So we just need to keep cranking on that. We're pretty much done for the week on that, right? And if more people flow into the fund at these levels, which is not what I'm recommending with my 3-day caution rule, you could start to see the synthetics, because if people buy in, they're going to go and they're going to have to write these 1150s, right? They're going to have to sell more of these. And if they're in the money, well, if they're in the money, they won't get as much for the put. But if we drop down, they will. So those kind of balance out. All right, so guys, I think that's the most everything. It's not good news in some ways, but we weren't going to recover. We were going to lose unless we really took off. So with 2 days to go now, if we move up, I mean, everything that we're over that 1150, you know, we start, you know, on the put starts declining, right? This thing's 150 with a month to go. And it's not because we're underwater, right? It's just the time premium. So we can start knocking that down. Whoops, this should be, or on my April tab to pick up. You can see I built this, but I didn't do all of my housekeeping to update these guys. There we are, 1188. All right, guys, I think that's it for today. I wanted to get this out a little earlier than normal. Have a great day ahead, and let's go, Misty and Coney. Again, this is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. This is for fun and education. Good night.